Welcome. I'm Brendan Christian, director at Christian the Law Firm, and in this clip we're looking at the shares within a private limited company in England and Wales, and more particularly the types of shares that company law recognizes in England and Wales. Again, we're focusing on the types of shares of a private limited company in England and Wales. Please note, this is quite a technical area of law, and so please do take specialist legal advice around your particular private limited company and the types of shares you would like shareholders to hold within your private limited company. It's an incredibly technical area, so please do take specialist legal advice. The second point to note is, this clip in no way, shape or form is intended as legal advice. It's being produced purely for the purposes of general information, i.e. general educational purposes. Right, let's get to it. The first question is, what types of shares are there? Well, as a general principle, a company, a private limited company in England and Wales may have as many different types of shares as it wishes, all with different conditions attached to them. But generally speaking, company law recognizes four types of shares that could be held by a shareholder of a private limited company in England and Wales. Very briefly, these four types of shares are, firstly, ordinary shares, second, preferential shares, third, cumulative preference shares, and fourth, redeemable shares. Taking ordinary shares first, these shares are exactly that. They are ordinary shares of the company with no special rights or restrictions attached to them. It is perfectly possible that a particular company may decide that within the category of ordinary shares, there would be a letter category as well. So you would have A ordinary shares, as opposed to B ordinary shares, as opposed to C ordinary shares, as opposed to D ordinary shares. All, of course, issued by the same company. That's perfectly possible. And so the obvious question is, well, what's the difference then between these A ordinary shares as opposed to these B ordinary shares as opposed to these C ordinary shares? Well, a good place to start in answering that question would be to look at the company's Articles of Association. That's effectively the company's constitution, for want of a better expression. The Articles of Association will make clear exactly what the differences are between the different categories. Another good place to look will be as well the actual shareholder agreements that's signed between the company and the shareholders who hold the different categories. Of course, classification of the different categories and what rights are attached to the different categories are also matters to be dealt with at special resolutions, or indeed the AGM of the company, for example. So have regard to the minutes of the AGM, any record, written record that is, of decisions taken by way of special resolution and so forth. And that will give you a clear steer as to what the different rights are with respect to the different categories. So that's ordinary shares. Turning then to preference shares or preferential shares. As its name suggests, it ranks slightly higher than an ordinary share. A preferential share does, that is. And so here we're looking at shares that carry a right that the company should pay any annual dividends available for distribution on these shares before a dividend is payable on, or indeed paid, on other classes of shares, if you follow. So a preferential share is quite a good share to hold, actually, because, put it quite plainly, you're pretty much first in the queue, and if not first, way up in front of the queue when it comes to receiving a dividend, i.e. ordinary shareholders rank behind you in the queue, as it were. Turning then to cumulative preference shares, these shares normally carry a right that if the company cannot pay the dividend in 1 year, it will carry it forward to successive years. Again, this is a good share to hold, and for obvious reasons. And fourth and finally, redeemable shares. Redeemable shares are issued by the company with an agreement that the company, will buy them back at the option of either the company or the shareholder after a certain period or on a fixed date. Please note, a company cannot have only redeemable shares. That's an important point to note. Just a quick reminder, here we're dealing purely with private limited companies limited by shares in England and Wales. Please note that we're dealing with private limited companies limited by shares in England and Wales. If you're outside of England and Wales, please do take specialist legal advice around your particular circumstances. Turning then to another often asked question. And the question has invariably been, Brendan, shareholders, do they have to buy the shares in cash, i.e. must payment be in cash? And the short and honest answer to that question is no, not necessarily. Payment for shares in a private limited company limited by shares in England and Wales can be made, payment can be made in a variety of ways. And that variety of ways includes cash, goods, i.e. barter, services, again barter, property, goodwill, know-how, or even, wait for it, shares in another company. There you go. So generally speaking, people can pay for shares in a private limited company limited by shares in England and Wales. They can pay wholly by cash or a mixture of cash and part non-cash payment, or wholly by way of a non-cash payment. So there's much flexibility, certainly in company law in England and Wales, around the purchasing of shares in a private limited company. I hope you found this discussion incredibly helpful and incredibly useful. I am Brendan Christian, director at Christian the Law Firm. If you need any assistance with shareholder agreements, please do come and speak to us. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.